Chief Futurist at Futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, author Nikolas Badminton joining us on Canada Now. And Nick, with the collapse of FTX, this week we look at how crypto has failed in the mainstream.
You know, to be absolute with any of these statements is a little silly. Here's the situation, and I've been following things like Bitcoin, Ethereum for a very long period of time. Very much like this comes from a counterculture, a challenge to central banking. Then it suddenly gets turned into, an asset class, and people go crazy hiring it. Suddenly the NFT boom happens, all these things, and like crypto's the hottest thing on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Last few months, it's kind of been in free fall a little bit and struggling. A lot of the miners have been going out of business and really struggling because the way they set up their business needed, the currencies, whether it's altcoins or Bitcoin or Ethereum themselves, to be ultimately growing, profitable, staying at certain levels, right? And then FTX comes. Right. And I'm just going to start off by sharing something from their Chapter 11 first day affidavit. Right.
All right.
And this, which they just filed. So the restructuring CEO is a guy called John J. Ray III, and he oversaw Enron's bankruptcy proceedings. Right. So the guy's been around the house, and that was a long time ago, like 20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So part of the affidavit is this. I'm going to read this verbatim. Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. From compromised systems integrity and faulty regulatory oversight abroad to the concentration of control in the hands of a very small group of inexperienced, unsophisticated, and potentially compromised individuals, this situation is unprecedented.
Wow.
Why? So like...
Yeah.
Sam Bankman-Fried, and the team, they were all out there. They became stars. They're out there. People believed them. Why couldn't people see that this was a problem? Just in terms of their capability. It's like, no, take money. I mean, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan put $95 million into that crypto platform.
Yeah.
It's almost like people suspended all sensibility.
Is it because they spent money? Is it because they spent money? They advertised, they advertised during the Super Bowl. They were, in Washington. They were sidling up to leaders in Washington. Is that why?
Smoke and mirrors, Jeff. Yeah. Anyone can represent themselves. And if suddenly, and this is like, money makes the world go around. Greed and wealth. All of this has been driving people. The Miami Heat's arena got renamed the FTX Arena. Right, there was a picture online last week of them taking down all of the advertising. Right, I mean, they really messed up. I mean, a lack of liquidity. I mean, just 2 days ago, they were trying to raise $10 billion in liquidity from investors. Who's going to go near these people?
Right,
they're completely incompetent, and they've lost all of this money. And celebrities have lost money, and institutions have lost money, and It's wild. We live in a world where we're so dissatisfied with, the legacy systems that are a little bit more tried and true and the safeguards around them, that we're looking for some excitement. But why should excitement cost billions of dollars for people,
And they're not going to be able to pay their customers back, right? Like that's no chance. Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone. Oh my God!
Yeah.
So
they've been hacked, quote hacked, or like funds have gone missing. A whole bunch of different stuff. It's shady. This is the surfacing of what cryptocurrency and that world has always been. It's always been shady. It's always been offline. It's driven like the economy of crime. Since its inception, right? And now it's in the public arena. Everyone's really upset, and it's the dirty business behind so much in crypto, whether it's NFTs and all of these different things.
Nick, there was one article that I had read that said something like crypto had been relatively stable after so many highs last year. And I went, stable? How could this have happened? And then describe much of this year as stable.
You know, in Bitcoin, they talk about decentralization, but about 60 people own the majority of the wealth in the Bitcoin universe, right? It's so shaky. I'm doing research right now on the future of finance, and you know, I'm not even going to write a lot about crypto because right now, you know, it's just someone needs to make a film on crypto that's really wild. I watched a film on the Wall Street bets people from Reddit, and that was fascinating as well. Similar thing, like boosting stocks and whatever, social media and the hype. But it's like, you know, if there's a belief, there can be an economy, which was sort of the takeaway from that. The belief economy behind crypto is that, you know, to the moon. $1 million a Bitcoin to the moon. Let's put laser eyes on our profile pictures on Twitter, Jeff. Let's go LFG. You know, GM. Good morning. It's this weird subculture. You know, it's supremely cyberpunk, which is partly why I kind of love this weirdness in the world.
Yeah.
But you know, people have been messed up. And it's greed and wealth.
So are we now going to see more regulation in the industry by lawmakers, or has this downfall with FTX not just curtailed operations with other companies, but are going to shut them down altogether?
The SEC have been watching this area for a very long time. I was speaking at a conference like 6 years ago in Toronto. And someone from the SEC was in the green room, and they're watching it. They've been watching this, watching and waiting. Do you know what? I think they've kind of stepped back and they've let all of the bad behavior bleed out of crypto. And it's become very obvious what's happened. You know, how can you regulate something that doesn't want to be regulated? So you know, we're going to find ourselves at loggerheads over the next like 2 to 5 years. The tipping point is going to be when governments start thinking about their central bank digital currencies, start thinking about the mechanisms behind that. You know, they're going to try and obliterate these kinds of, you know, currencies. And in a way, Jeff, I kind of want these currencies and the people that love them to disappear back into the subculture, to use it, to apply it. I mean, I used to be in Vancouver. There's a huge subculture there around Bitcoin. I think it was like the world's first Bitcoin ATM was in Vancouver. The people that I knew had been mining Bitcoin since 2012 or something like that. And, you know, they're trying to use the funds, which were very modest, to do some really cool stuff to prove out the technology. And now we kind of lost that. So I kind of hope that we get back to you know, the heart and soul of what this was all about.
Yeah.
Which is an alternative that is truly decentralized, that is applicable and practical and utilitarian. You know, people were buying beers and pizzas with this stuff back in the day, places like Berlin and Vancouver and whatever.
Yeah.
It's not a currency anymore. So what do you do? It's tough. It's fascinating to watch. And I've been watching it for a long time. And earlier this year, I did a keynote on the Metaverse.
Yeah.
And I had a client, a big consultancy, that were like, yeah, but we can't miss this. This is, you're being too critical. It's like, this is going to be the next big thing. If we miss this, you know, IBM missed cloud computing. Like, yeah. It's like, no. This is all like house of cards. It's so like all of the evidence. I did this keynote. And then someone after the keynote is like, let's go and buy some land in Decentraland, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, God.
So, okay, so it's one thing for you to say that this is a house of cards. Don't enter. Don't go near. But for those, with all due respect, that would have power to somehow try to prevent this from happening. I mean, apparently FTX was sending its own money or its customers' money around to its sibling entities. How could framework have not been in place to prevent that from happening in the first place, to protect those that would be living in this house of cards?
So I've created a little document for this conversation. Jeff, I'll share it with you afterwards. Yeah. I've got the structuring of the company. It's absolutely insane. The entities it's like if you were going to structure a shell company to avoid, you know, easy traceability and accountability, this is how you do it. Dozens of entities, money flowing between all of them from, like, you know, 2 or 3, you know, key entities, and the people within them, Like every day, it's like waking up and it's like, you know what? Let's pull the tarot cards and let's see how the universe takes us today and where we should put some money. It's like, yeah, let's take some chance. We can shape the world. The maniacal naivety of this team is shocking to me, and it should shock the world, and it has. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, no kidding. Chief Futurist at futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, author Nikolas Badminton. Nick, appreciate it as always, my friend. We'll talk again.
I'll speak to you soon, Jeff.
All right, buddy. Looking forward to it.